All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. My name is Molly Green. I'm the Career Education Coordinator with SuccessWorks, and we're so happy to have you here today. So for all the students in the room, we have some great alumni guests joining us today to talk about environmental law and policy. We have Kevin Allexon, Bridgette Gilmore, and Laura Goldberg, and I'll give you all a moment to introduce yourselves. But I just want to say a couple quick things. So for all our alumni guests, while you're speaking, or while you're not speaking, please make sure you're muted so there are no audio issues while others are speaking, of course. For students, we're going to have everyone introduce themselves, give an overview of their backgrounds, their current position, and then we're going to open it up for questions. So feel free to put questions in the chat and I can read those out. Or you can, of course, raise your hands, turn on your audio and video with any questions. And there are no bad questions. I'm sure if you're wondering something, other students are as well. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to ask Kevin, do you want to go first and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Kevin Allexon. I am a graduate of the wonderful University of Wisconsin, probably a few moons before some of my co-panelists here. I have lived and worked in the DC area for more than 20 years. Moved out here to work on the Hill, which I did for a while. Then eventually fate took me to the executive branch to work in the administration of President George W. Bush. Since then, I worked in public affairs in the corporate world for a while. And for the last 5+ years, I have been working for Ocean Conservancy, an ocean conservation organization, as it sounds. I'm a lobbyist for them, and I work on fisheries management issues, but predominantly one thing that takes up a lot of my time right now is dealing with the ocean plastics problem, marine debris, mismanaged plastic waste, all of it. And that is a very time-consuming issue to work on these days, but incredibly challenging and very rewarding. So that's sort of the nutshell about me. I'll shut up and let my co-panelists introduce themselves.
Great, thanks so much, Kevin. How about Laura? Would you like to go next?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks so much for having me today, and thanks to my co-panelists. Glad to have so many students on. So Laura Goldberg, I use she, her pronouns. I'm based in Chicago, Illinois. I am also a graduate of University of Wisconsin and loved my time there. It is really where I got my passion for working on environmental issues. I was involved in a student org at the time while I was there called Big Red Go Green, which was part of the Student Public Interest and Research Group, WISPERG. And since graduating, I've moved back to the Chicago area. I have lived in the city since 2012. And I started my career at an a consumer advocacy nonprofit, the Citizens Utility Board, but I did a lot of environmental and energy efficiency related education and outreach for about 4 years there, and since have been at the Natural Resources Defense Council, NRDC, for about the last 5 years. I am our Midwest Regional Director for a project called Energy Efficiency for All, which looks at the intersection of affordable housing and energy efficiency. And so I'm pre-COVID days traveling around to Missouri, Michigan, Minnesota, as well as working in Illinois, bringing together coalitions of housing, energy, environmental justice, climate justice, renter advocacy groups to work on these issues. So I'll leave it there, happy to dig in further, and I'll leave it to the next panelist to introduce herself.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Bridgette Gilmore. I also use she, her pronouns, and I'm calling in from New Haven, Connecticut. I graduated from Wisconsin in 2017. I studied conservation biology and English literature, and overall I've been really motivated by the idea of scientific literacy and how people take science to make decisions. After I graduated, I did an AmeriCorps service term with Teton Science Schools in Jackson, Wyoming. I then worked for a year in Australia at a field station, and overall had the idea that I wanted to go back to graduate school. So currently I'm a master's student at the Yale School of the Environment, and prior to school I actually had worked in Chicago as well with the Environmental Law and Policy Center, where they worked on school bus electrification issues, and definitely fell in love with the topic. Have been able to gear a lot of my studies currently for transportation issues and moving forward the future of mobility. I'll be graduating this May once again, and we'll be working with ARPA-E, the Advanced Research Projects Agency for Energy, looking at some of their connected autonomous vehicle stuff. So yeah, definitely excited to answer any questions today. I'd been a part of the Wisconsin Alumni Student Board as an undergraduate, and so excited to be back as an alum.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much for introducing yourselves. So I just want to start off the questions here. And of course, students, if you have questions, again, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hands to answer those. But first, I just wanted to ask, what are some steps that you all took while you were undergraduate students that helped you narrow down this career path or helped you take those first steps in your career? And anyone can feel free to jump in.
Yeah, this is Laura. I'm happy to start. So I love to mention that I actually came into Wisconsin undecided. So definitely my volunteer work and work on internships while I was there helped inform my majors as well as my career path. I knew I was interested in sort of policy or politics to some degree, but didn't exactly know the focus. And so getting involved with the student group I mentioned, Big Red Go Green, definitely helped kind of shape what I was interested in doing and helped shape that I was interested in doing environmental work. At the time when I was an undergrad, there was not an environmental major. There was a minor in the Nelson Institute, but not a major. So I kind of created my own environmental major through international studies with a global environmental concentration. So I could get a little more of a world and global view on environmental issues, but also kind of get a smattering of issue expertise and interests. And so while I was an undergrad, in addition to the student volunteer work, I also did some work with a couple nonprofits, the Wisconsin Partners for Sustainability, which I'm not sure is still in existence anymore, unfortunately, but that was a really great summer internship where I got to do some work on green cleaning products and sort of working with different local businesses on environmental issues. Also randomly worked for a biofuels company one summer and helped, call restaurants to sell their used cooking oil. So I got a little bit of a feel, through my classes as well as my volunteer work while I was an undergrad in terms of my areas of interest, and helped to sort of narrow both my major and my career focus, but also just my interest within the environmental field.
Bridget, go ahead, please.
Okay, certainly. Yeah, so I think for me, what was super helpful was also figuring out the things that I didn't enjoy as much. So I worked in a few labs while I was an undergrad, and while I really loved the research experience, I think I was a little bit more interested in the communications and implementation side of things. So I think that was really helpful in informing what I wanted to do. I actually got connected with the Environmental Law and Policy Center while I was an undergrad. I went to some sort of luncheon for a couple of alumni that wanted to learn more about what was going on with conservation biology, and I had discussed my general interest, and a professor had served on their science advisory board for the Environmental Law and Policy Center. And so I helped them plan a conference my senior year, which was super fun. And so was able to come back and work with them later on in my career as well. So yeah, I think that those were two things that come to mind.
So I showed up in Madison intending to be a chemical engineer, and that was it, right? I was all settled. I knew exactly what the plan was. And in the first couple of years of my time in Madison, I discovered that I did not like chemistry nearly as much as I thought I did, and then subsequent to that, I discovered I didn't like math nearly as much as I thought I did. And I'm not the world's smartest guy, but I figured out that that probably was a pretty good indication that engineering wasn't for me. So as I kind of wandered in the wilderness of the undecided ranks for a little while, I just tried to get involved in some campus activities, groups and whatnot, just to try to sample things and get a flavor of what else was out there. And I was attending a meeting of one of the campus political organizations, and I heard, and this featured speaker at the meeting was someone who had spent the previous summer interning at the White House. And I had always had an interest in politics, and was, for what you can be in high school, relatively politically active. But listening to this guy talk about, just his experience at the White House as an intern, all the things he got to do, he got to see people he got to meet, the stuff he got to witness, and how he was using that to facilitate his internship experiences subsequent to that, and working in the office of an elected official, and what that was like. And I was just listening to all of it, and I thought, one, this is absolute catnip for me, and two, holy crap, I could do this too. And that's kind of what led me in the path that I pursued. I ultimately landed on political science, and chose wanted to go into government. Much less politics than government, but politics is all a part of it. I'm not much of a campaign person. That's a tougher brass knuckle environment than I really have the stomach for, quite honestly. Governing is more my bag, and that's so I figured out that was sort of in the realm of the possible, and here I am, just a few years later, of course. I've had a great run, great set of experiences across the spectrum of government.